In the Syrian desert, a new flashpoint has emerged in the long and bloody conflict that has ravaged the Middle East for over a decade. Russian airstrikes have targeted militant bases near the US-controlled Tanf zone, a strategic stronghold on Syria's southern border. The strikes signal Moscow's deepening involvement in the region, where President Putin is building a network of alliances beyond Syria's borders. The Russian aerospace forces carried out the strikes announced by Oleg Ignasyuk, deputy chief of Russia's Center for Reconciliation of Opposing Parties in Syria. This highlights Russia's increasing opposition to US involvement in the region. The Tanf zone, long a US base for counter-terrorism operations, has been a contentious point, with both Moscow and Washington accusing each other of violating airspace agreements. The timing and target of this operation are significant. Moscow claims the militant bases were harboring insurgents from Tanf, accusing the US of ignoring rebel activities. The report emphasized that Syrian forces with Russian support are stepping up reconnaissance across Homs and Deir ez-Zor to eliminate remaining insurgents. For Moscow, this is about asserting dominance in a region central to global power struggles. Meanwhile, the US Central Command announced 2 strikes in Syria that killed 37 terrorist operatives, including senior ISIS and al-Qaeda figures, adding complexity to the regional struggle. Russia's intervention in Syria, which began in 2015, was initially to support Assad, but has evolved into a larger strategy to expand its influence across the Middle East. Syria has become a proving ground for Russia's military, a testing site for weaponry, and a cornerstone of Putin's broader Middle East strategy. Moscow's latest strikes are part of a broader pattern of growing tensions with the US in Syria, with recent violations of deconfliction protocols reported by Russian officials. These incidents included unauthorized drone flights by US-led coalition forces, seen as provocations by Moscow. Russian authorities also accused US fighter jets of breaching Syrian airspace near Tanf, raising the risk of direct confrontation. The Syrian civil war, now in its 12th year, has turned into a proxy war between Russia and the US, with competing international alliances fueling the conflict. Rebel groups backed by the US and its allies fought Assad's regime, while Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah supported Assad. Today, Syria remains a battlefield for geopolitical rivalries, with Russia playing a pivotal role. But Syria is only part of the story. In recent months, Russia has positioned itself as a key mediator in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, traditionally dominated by the US. Iran's recent missile strikes on Israel came against the backdrop of Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin's visit to Tehran, intensifying regional tensions. The strikes, involving hypersonic Fatah missiles, targeted Israeli military bases in response to Israeli actions against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Mishustin's meeting with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian highlighted deepening Russian-Iranian ties, with the two leaders discussing cooperation against Western sanctions. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps justified the missile attack as retaliation for Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon, where Hezbollah, an Iranian ally, remains a significant force. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu recently sent his military aid to Moscow to negotiate the release of hostages, including a dual Israeli-Russian national, reflecting the complex alliances in the region. Netanyahu's outreach to Putin underscores the evolving diplomatic landscape, with Israel relying on Russia's influence over Hamas for negotiations. Meanwhile, Russia is positioning itself as both a critic of Hamas and a potential mediator in the conflict, maintaining ties with all sides. This is part of Russia's broader strategy to challenge US influence in the Middle East. At the UN, Russian officials have criticized US policies, with Dmitry Polyansky accusing Washington of obstructing humanitarian efforts in Gaza. Even Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has turned to Moscow for support, aligning with Russia's criticism of Israeli settlement policies. Putin reiterated Russia's support for a Palestinian state, positioning Moscow as a champion of Palestinian rights on the global stage. Russia has also cultivated military and economic alliances with regional powers like Iran and North Korea, further expanding its influence. Iran, facing heavy sanctions, has become a crucial ally for Russia. Recent meetings between their leaders emphasize their commitment to strengthening ties against Western pressure. North Korea, too, has deepened its military cooperation with Russia, with Kim Jong-un's meeting with Shoigu highlighting their defense partnerships. The alignment of Russia, Iran, and North Korea has raised concerns in the West about a new axis of authoritarian powers challenging US dominance. China plays a key role in this emerging alliance, with Russia and China working closely to counter Western influence, as seen in Putin's meeting with China's top diplomat earlier this year. For Putin, the stakes in the Middle East are high. As his war in Ukraine drags on, projecting power abroad is critical for maintaining Russia's global standing. By securing alliances in the Middle East, Putin is challenging US influence in one of the world's most volatile regions. Whether this gamble pays off remains to be seen, but Russia is no longer content to play second fiddle.